trees. The Sycamore gap tree on Hadrian's Wall in Northumberland was made famous.
The sycamore, once crowned the best tree in England, hiked to, pondered at, proposed in front of, was last night deliberately felled.
On Hadrian's Wall for 2 centuries, the tree of Sycamore Gap was felled on Wednesday night in what is being described as an act of vandalism.
On Thursday morning, September the 28th, 2023, hikers made a disheartening discovery. The iconic sycamore tree located on Hadrian's Wall, known as Robin Hood's tree since 1991, had been felled sometime between nightfall on Wednesday and dawn. This channel typically doesn't cover news or current affairs, with the most recent subject matter focusing on 20th century films. However, the cultural vandalism involved in the felling of this tree at Sycamore Gap has piqued my interest. A month before the tree's demise, we had filmed it as part of a video on the Pennine Way. It has also made appearances in videos I have created about Hadrian's Wall. My connection to this tree goes beyond being someone who has walked and filmed along Hadrian's Wall and extends to taking pictures of the tree during numerous visits dating back to my childhood. But in a previous chapter of my life, I worked as a tree feller. This background knowledge provides insight into the methods of the crime, although it doesn't shed light on the motive. Yes, this is indeed a crime. The law, specifically the Criminal Damage Act of 1971, classifies this as a criminal offence. Anyone without lawful excuse destroying property belonging to someone else, such as the landowner, the National Trust in this case. And they can face a penalty up to 10 years imprisonment. So this is no laughing matter. At the time of publishing this video, a 16-year-old had been arrested and assisted the police in their inquiries, and released on police bail. This was followed by the arrest of a man in his 60s. But first, let's delve into a bit of background to understand why such an act has made headlines. The tree in question is arguably the most photographed tree in Britain. It gained fame as Robin Hood's tree after it appeared in the 1991 film Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, weirdly on a route from Dover to Nottingham. As to its age, it's anywhere from 300 years to 200, although supposedly it was planted as part of landscaping with other trees about 160 years ago. This tree possesses remarkable photogenic qualities, and it's served as a meaningful location for various events. People have chosen it as a place to scatter the ashes of their loved ones, renew their marriage vows, and it inspired a local pub and microbrewery, Twice Brewed, to adopt it as their logo and name their pale ale after it. Nestled within the landscape of the historical Hadrian's Wall and boasting proportions and perspectives often found in artwork, it's no wonder that this tree has become the most photographed, painted and iconic tree in all of Britain. In fact, a search for Britain's most famous trees consistently places Sycamore Gap among the top 2. With an impressive 100,000 visitors annually to this section of Hadrian's Wall, its widespread recognition is hardly surprising. In comparison, Britain's renowned major oak in Nottingham Forest, perhaps a much more fitting candidate as Robin Hood's tree, welcomes 2 or 3 times the number of visitors, although it has inspired a fraction of the paintings, prints and photographs, and the notion of felling it would be a significant undertaking. So now, let's turn our attention to the pressing question: who felled the tree, and what motivated such an act? This investigation serves as much a pursuit of my own curiosity as it does a public attempt to speculate on the motives and the culprits. To begin, the felling occurred under cover of darkness on the evening of Wednesday the 27th or the morning of the 28th. This is particularly noteworthy is that a storm with winds exceeding 50 miles per hour were passing through at the time.
Central parts of Scotland and that broad yellow warning you saw earlier. But everything is moving its way.
Felling a tree in such conditions be considered reckless, or the act of a well-trained individual, or most likely a combination of both traits. As depicted in this photograph, with a police officer for scale, the tree trunk measures approximately 1 metre in diameter. An enhanced image of the stump unequivocally reveals that it was felled with a single cut. This implies that the chainsaw used for the task had a bar length exceeding a metre. This detail is noteworthy since most saws employed by farmers or even foresters are relatively shorter. Such an extended bar length are found on specialised heavy felling chainsaws, which are both bulky and expensive and are typically owned exclusively by professional tree fellers. Whilst it's possible to fell a large tree with a smaller homeowner or farm saw, doing so would require cutting from both sides or employing a more technical approach, which would leave a distinctive cut mark on the stump. Another observable aspect is the quality of the cut. The mouth or gob, the directional cut, appear skillfully executed. Even though the bottom cut is slightly deeper, it's essential to remember that this was carried out in the dark during high winds. The felling cut, which is correct despite seeming counterintuitive, and the hinge are precisely on target.
In the middle of the night.
Do you know what I fear? Sorry to interrupt you. What I fear is that this, as somebody put to me on Twitter actually, somebody official marked the tree for cutting down by mistake, and now they don't want to own up to having done it.
Wow. Well, that would be absolutely fascinating, but the whole thing is extremely murky.
There is a possibility of white painted line being present, which has generated speculation. My assumption is that it's a spray line used to ensure precision when making the felling cut in the dark. A professional cut of this nature, executed using a specialist saw under challenging conditions of darkness and high winds, would likely exclude most vandals from consideration. The police swiftly arrested a 16-year-old, but later released him without pressing charges, indicating that his apprehension may have been based on intelligence, such as social media posts, where he's boasted of his nocturnal exploits. Following this, the 60-year-old individual was also arrested. Yet, as of the video's publication, no further action has been taken. Now, the person or persons responsible for this act most likely parked their vehicle about a mile away in the car park and approached the tree from the west while carrying their saw, as the location is rather remote. Regarding motive, it appears to be pointless, foolish, and a shocking prank. Perhaps driven by a desire to cause disruption, the involvement of a 16-year-old and the need for a skilled older accomplice with access to an expensive professional saw would implicate a group known as, young farmers. This semi-formal social group consists of individuals between 16 and 28, mainly male, whose activities often include socialising and drinking. It's important to note that I'm not attempting to tarnish young farmers in general, many of whom engage in charitable and community work. Nevertheless, they are not immune to indulging in immature pranks, although covering it in traffic cones would have sufficed on this occasion. The arrest of a 60-year-old may relate to the origins of the specialist chainsaw. These saws feature unique chains, and the sawdust or other shavings could serve to identify the fingerprint of the saw. Forensic analysis may also identify the brand of chain lubricating oil. However, simply lending out a saw, even if it is later used in a crime, is not a criminal act. So in conclusion, this incident appears to be a senseless act, or perhaps a protest against the landowner, the National Trust. The motive for now remains anyone's guess. What is unmistakable, though, is that the goal was to create maximum impact. As someone aptly put it, this was a theft of joy. The loss of Robin Hood's tree is indeed significant, as it draws attention to an intriguing aspect of British culture. On a recent visit to Iceland, I discovered polling in the country has revealed that belief in elves remains widespread, even in a modern and predominantly Christian country. This serves as evidence that pagan beliefs are not entirely absent in contemporary society. And it leads me to wonder if pagan tree worship still prevails in the United Kingdom. If a poll were to be conducted, would foreign visitors be surprised by the prevalence of Druidism and the worship of trees, and trees often imbued with magical properties? Individual trees often serve as a focal point for individuals, offering spaces for reflection and representing permanence, given they appear to endure for forever, almost. Ancient trees though lacking eyes, are often seen as witnesses to historical events, symbolising the idea of something observing our past and our present. Whilst I cannot make sweeping claims about the national reverence for trees, the reaction to the felling of the Sycamore Gap tree is telling. It has prompted expressions of grief and resulted in calls for severe punishments for the culprits, including lengthy prison sentences. This reaction suggests that something deeply rooted in the British consciousness is connected to these ancient symbols of nature. The news that broke on Thursday also included the tragic murder of a 15-year-old in a public setting, and one might wonder how the felling of a tree could possibly compare to such a senseless act of violence. It's crucial to emphasise that news is not a competition, and the loss of a young life is a devastating and heart-wrenching event for her family, friends, and the local community in London. The impact of news stories isn't solely determined by the gravity of the crime or incident, also about how many people that incident touches. In this regard, the Sycamore tree garnered immense attention, much like the passing of a celebrity, resonating with tens of thousands of individuals who felt a personal connection to it. The sense of loss surrounding this tree might stem from the deep-rooted connection that humans have with trees, particularly on a spiritual level. Throughout myth and legend, we encounter the concept of a world tree, and real trees often hold magical or symbolic significance. Notable examples include the Glastonbury thorn and the nearby Gog and Magog, and the white-leaved oak in Malvern. All three of these trees met their end due to old age and accidents. And while their losses were significant on a local level, they didn't have the same widespread national impact as the felling of the sycamore tree. This contrast raises questions about society's relationship with nature and the emotional connections we form with trees in the landscape. It highlights the capacity of the natural elements to evoke profound emotions and inspire a collective response, even when compared to human tragedies. The sycamore tree's story becomes a reflection of our complex relationship with the environment and our ability to unite around shared symbols of nature in ways that can sometimes overshadow even the most tragic of human events. Nature worship often has regeneration as a central theme, life renewed after the death of winter. And Robin Hood's tree is not dead. It will coppice, throwing up new shoots, which over a period of a century or so will restore its presence. I noticed when filming the construction of HS2 and talking to protesters for another project, there was an almost fetishization of individual trees. An old wild pear tree became a focus of protest and was elevated to Tree of the Year. But in part, this focus on individual trees was because we have the most denuded landscape. If Robin Hood's tree was one of many, would we be quite so angry at its loss? So, what do you think? Leave a comment, like and subscribe.